NonCarbonGrid.com, I have the email listed as my name as a aid memoir for you. And I'd like to introduce our speaker tonight, Gavin Watson, who is doing a presentation on how to get a free energy audit. Gavin recently retired from a family business in West Haven, Connecticut, and that business saved about $200,000 electricity due to the agent's energy saving ideas it implemented. Saving energy and reducing carbon footprint are two things Gavin is passionate about. He is also the chair of the Connecticut chapter of Conscious Capitalism. Gavin, welcome.
Thanks, Vincent. So I'm going to share my screen.
And I should mention that if you have questions during Gavin's presentation, feel free to use the chat. I will be monitoring the chat, and then we'll be raising your questions to Gavin.
Yep, great, thanks. So I assume you can see my screen, right, Vincent? Okay, good. So this is going to be about having a home energy solutions energy assessment on your house. And energy saving is something that, like Vincent was saying, I'm really passionate about this. There's so much that can be done energy saving wise, and it's really going to make a big difference for the planet if we pitch in and do these things. This is a relatively easy, simple thing to do. So we're just going to go through the process and I'll explain it, and I'll also tell you how it went for me. Yeah, let's see. Good. So unfortunately, the bad news is the assessments are no longer free. Before the pandemic, they were $150, and then from March 2020 to 2021, the period of time where we scheduled this, they actually were free. But as April 1st, they now have a copay of $50. So it's not that much. And I tell you, it's well worth it. So, and it will probably still be one of those biggest return on investments that you can make. So I'm sure you guys will all be interested in how much you can save. So the assessment, as I said, costs about $50. According to the U.S. Department of Energy, most households spend around $2,000. That's the 2014 number. So it's probably a bit more than that now. And if you're going to save, and most people save somewhere between 5 and 30% of their energy bills after having one of these audits and having the things, one of these assessments and having the things done during the assessment will actually save you this much right at the get-go. So that's somewhere between 97 and $100 and $600 or so. And for me, it was exactly that. It's about $450 or so that I saved. So I'm a sailor, so just a word about efficiency from my point of view. There's our two, you can see the two boats there. The one on the left of your screen is about 20 years old. It was state of the art for America's Cup racing. The one on the right is today's state of the art America's Cup racing. The wind is the same. The water is the same. You can tell by looking at the water conditions that it's about the same amount of wind. And it's all about efficiency. The boat on the left is going about 14 miles an hour, and the one on the right is going 63 miles an hour. And it's going 63 miles an hour because it's making much better use of the wind energy that's passing by it, and it's really reduced its drag, its waste. So you can see the boat on the left it's got surface friction of the boat all going through the water. This is generating all these waves. That's wasted energy. So what we can really do with our houses is we can save a lot of energy, and we can make our houses more like the energy efficient high class, high tech boats that are out there now foiling around. So that's a picture of my house. And that's a picture of my plug-in hybrid car. So it's sort of foreshadowing Vincent's talk on hybrid electric vehicles that'll be coming up in a few weeks. Basically I want my house to be like that boat. And sometimes, you think about efficiency on cars, and the standard internal combustion engine cars really haven't changed much in decades. So, maybe you pick up 2 or 3 miles to gallon more efficiency over 10 years. The house thing is totally different ball of wax. You can pick up a huge improvement on energy efficiency on your house. There's much more possibilities there. So, and I just wanted to reflect back If you were here on the very first presentation we did, you know that Roberta showed this this En-ROADS presentation, and she talked about all the different things that go into the energy that we're using and affecting climate change. So, you know, we are on track right now for getting to about 3.6 degrees Celsius if we don't change our habits, and for this planet to end up doing well and for this not to be a complete disaster, really need to stay below 2 and hopefully below 1.5. So what we're doing here, what we're talking about is this part here, the energy efficiency and electrification part of buildings and industry. So obviously this is just buildings and homes, but our homes are a big chunk of this. So if we, you know, if we successfully do that in that category, if we drag both those levers all the way up, we're going to chop off 0.5 degree Celsius and 30 gigatons of less carbon, and that's a big impact. It's not, you know, obviously there's a lot more that needs to go into it for us to get to below 2, but that's a pretty big chunk. So one of the things that you guys may not know, I didn't know until very recently, is that the Connecticut grid already is 65% non-carbon. And the main reason for that is that we've got a lot of nuclear power. We've got the Millstone power plant, and we have some renewables. So already right now, if you switch something over onto the electric grid, say it's something that right now is burning gas and you make it electric, like a water heater, it's already a good move. But within 4 years, by 2025, we're projected in the state of Connecticut to be 91% non-carbon in our grid. So anything you can do in the meantime between now and then to switch over to putting more appliances, more things on electricity as opposed to other things, you're going in the right direction. So how big an impact is this? So just to get a relative size thing here, the average household produces 8.66 tons of CO2, and that's about 70% more CO2 than the average car is emitting during the course of the year. So if you, like I was saying before, you know, if you drive your car, you know, with the tires pumped up really hard and you drive very carefully, and, you know, you might eke out 1 or 2 miles to gallon more. If you're super careful, maybe drive behind a semi truck on the highway, that kind of thing. But the really big thing that you can do is stuff on your house. So this is, so we're, you know, where is all that energy going? All the energy that we're using in our houses. So you can see the biggest part of it here is the space heating. So it's about 45% of it. And then space cooling over here is about 9% of the energy that we're using in our houses. So in combination, that's about 54% of the energy is going to just these two things. So anything we can do to insulate our houses better, to use this to get this energy in a more efficient way, to put better windows in, any of that kind of stuff is going to have a big effect on the amount of energy that we're pulling in and using in our houses. The other thing I want to point out here is the water heating. So you know, making hot water is about 18% of what we're using in our houses these days. So if you can come up with a more, you know, efficient way of heating water, which we'll talk about, then, you know, that's another big chunk we can do. So this is my house. It's about 800 square feet, or sorry, it was about 800 square feet back in 1935. And when we bought it, we lived in it a few years, and then we put an addition on. So this is the addition on the backside over here. The original house was just this little tiny square.
You have to advance your slide. There you go.
Okay, yeah, I guess there's a lag or something there. Sorry. Thanks. So yeah, so that's my house there. And we do most of our heating with a wood stove. So we keep that wood stove cranking all winter. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night, stuff more wood in it. And that's made a big difference on the amount of fossil fuel that we're using. And we also have a propane boiler, and that is and the propane boiler is what's been generating the hot water that we're using. We don't have any air conditioning. So like I was saying in the beginning, the first place you want to start any kind of improvement on your house as far as energy goes is with this home energy assessment. I put the link that's down here in the bottom. I put that in the chat earlier on, so hopefully you can find that there. That'll take you to the Eversource website where you'll see this same picture that I've got here on the screen. And the reason why you want to start here is because if you want to say at some point if you want to put solar panels on your house, if you are thinking about insulating your house, all of the rebates and everything depend on you having this assessment first. So if you want to do the solar on your house and get the rebates for that, you're going to have to do this assessment. If you want to get $1.75 per square foot off on the insulation for your house, you need to do this assessment first. So, and there's a lot of good things that come out of doing this. You're going to discover a lot of interesting stuff about your house, as I did. So the local company that I use to do the assessment for me is this New England Smart Energy Group. They're really good. I put their link in the chat. And if you go, so you can go right to there, or you could also go to the Eversource website and you'll see a whole list of contractors that do this.
Gavin,
So,
we have a question.
Good, yeah, are there any questions? Yeah.
There's a question about why is computers at 6%? Seems like it should be less than cooking.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe because people are playing a lot of video games. Like my laptop, I'm sure doesn't use much, but my son has this big gaming computer with all these cooling fans on it and stuff. And I know from some things I've seen that, people are using a lot of energy doing that sort of stuff. So I'm not sure, but that graph came from the government website. I forget, Department of Energy or something like that, where I picked that up. So probably fairly accurate. Sir, is there any other questions?
No, but just another note. The company that you used was making contributions to the Ridgefield food pantry. I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. So why don't you throw that in, since you were more involved in that?
All right. So Race ran a program, and two companies were interested in running HES audits for Ridgefielders. And in exchange for the referral, they were making, I believe it was $25 or $50 gift donations to the Ridgefield Food Pantry.
Yep.
And the one that Gavin had noted that he had good success with was one of those two. I believe that they're still willing to do the same. So if you are going with a HES audit and you use the same company, make an inquiry about their contribution to the Ridgefield Food Pantry. They still might be willing to do that. Thank you, Gavin.
Yeah, no problem. That was great. Good catch. So, yeah, so we scheduled it, and about, I'll say 3 or 4 weeks later, we came around to the date, and two guys showed up with a bunch of equipment. And so the first thing they did was a safety audit, essentially, of the house. Safety assessment. So they look for things like mold or asbestos, and they also look for a gas leak. So they had this little magic wand thing. We opened the door to the boiler room, waved the wand around, didn't find anything, looked good. We were just about to close the door and leave, and the furnace kicked on, or the boiler kicked on, and all of a sudden his little instrument went absolutely nuts. So what it turned out was that this is in the picture here, this is the valve that opens when the furnace needs heat, it needs gas. And so this would open up and the gas would run through here into the furnace. And right here, there was a little test port plug thing that somebody had not tightened down properly. That was loose. So probably the last time the guy came in and checked it, he didn't tighten it down all the way. This little plug was loose, and we did not find this right away. We were spraying soapy water on this pipe and stuff. We couldn't figure out, ended up calling a plumber. Plumber came, found this pretty quickly, tightened it up, and that was that. So, but that was a really good find. So, because you would not have known that there was a gas leak there, except for when the boiler turned on. This gas started leaking out of that. So it was good. So we got that done. So what the guys do then is, basically, measure the house. So you've got an idea of how many square feet the house is. Ours is about, 1,200, 1,300 square feet or so. And just sort of look it over in general and, look for potential things that could be improved, light bulbs and stuff like that. But then the main thing that happens is we do this blower door test. So it's a thing that looks just like this big red thing here in the middle of the picture. And there's this fan on it, and they'll put it in a doorway in the house, an outside door, and seal it tight. Then turn the fan on and basically blow air out of the house. So as air is blowing out of the house, it's drawing air in through any little cracks, any little openings or gaps anywhere in your house. And so they turn that on, they run it at a bunch of different speeds. It measures how much air is getting pulled through. And then they go around and look for, the places where the air is going through. So the initial task for my house was this number over here, 5,846 CFM. So just so you know, for a good, what's considered good, you should have about 1 CFM per square foot of house. So good would have been about 1,300. So my house is leaking really, really bad. And, my wife and I knew this essentially because, if a skunk sprayed in the outside yard, you'd know it inside the house pretty much right away. They're kind of moving back and forth pretty easily. So they fixed a bunch of air leaks. They caulked things, put some gaskets in. I'll show you some pictures of all that. They did all of that. And then we dropped down to here. We got just under 5,000 and basically 882 CFM less, which is about 20% less, which isn't bad. And there's more work to be done, which we'll talk about in a minute. But they also changed out a bunch of light bulbs, sent me a nice summary report, which I'll show you at the end. And they emailed that to me. So, and then this is the projected savings from just the work that they did. So, basically I paid nothing for the audit because it was free at the time, but, if I did it now, it would have cost me $50 and essentially saved $415 right out of the gate, just with the stuff that they did. So this is a chart here just showing, go ahead, Vincent, is there a question?
Yes. Someone wanted to know whether it matters what season of the year you have the HES audit done. Was there a preferable season, a less desirable season?
No, it doesn't really matter. Ours was done on January 5th. So it was pretty cold, but it wasn't really a big deal. They'd turn the thing on and run it for 10, 15 minutes and that kind of thing, and then turn it on again. So it wasn't like we froze ourselves or anything in the house. It was fine. I did have to turn off the, let the wood stove die out the day before, because obviously you don't want to be sucking air down the chimney through the stove and sucking all the smoke into the house, that kind of thing. But yeah, other than that sort of stuff, it doesn't really matter when you do it. Are there any other questions?
No, just to note, there is actually a small payment everyone is making to HES audits. I don't know if you want to speak
sure,
to that a little bit.
That's a good point. Yeah, we're all actually paying for this in our bills anyway. So another way of looking at this is you're getting your money back. Because there is a little extra charge in your electric bill that goes towards these energy improvement things. And, talking about like in our company, we got massive amounts of money for rebates to do things at our company. And that was all funded by us, putting money in over the years into this program and or other companies. So it's to your advantage to get something for all the money that you're investing, essentially, which is another good way to look at it. Obviously, we're heating our house with a wood stove largely. Like last year, we only spent about $750 on propane. So most of the heat was coming from the wood stove. But, had I been using propane and that kind of thing, then, I'd be up here about $5,500 worth of worth to be spending on energy. After the improvements that they did during the assessment, I'm down here, but these are the other things that I can do to drop it even more. So these other recommendations are things like insulation, and other things like that we'll talk about in a minute. So during the during the assessment, this is the kind of stuff they did. This is sort of the cupboard under the stairs where maybe Harry Potter would have lived, that nobody ever looked into. But basically, a bunch of little leaks and cracks and stuff that they foamed holes up. So these holes went down into the crawl space underneath, which is not insulated, that sort of stuff. So this is where some of that air was leaking in. This is underneath the kitchen sink. There's a big, huge gap in the side panel of the cabinet under the sink. So they sealed this all up. Some of the other things, this is the, they put this gasketing on the hatch to the crawl space, and you can see some spray foam here around the edge of that. And then this is in the furnace, the boiler room, where the pipes and things are going back underneath the crawl space under the house, so they sealed that up. Gasketing around doors, this is our back door, which just leaked like a sieve. So they put some great gasketing on that solved that problem. Here's some other places where they put insulation up in the loft area. This is a picture over here of the crawl space under the house. You can see there's really no insulation here. There's a piece of foam board I'd stuffed over one of the vents, but there's no insulation anywhere on this. So that was one of the recommendations that they made to do this space under here. The roof up here in this space needed more insulation, and also just all the walls all the way around the house needed more insulation. These houses were built in 1935. They were little lakeside cottages that people would come out from the city and spend a week or weekends here in the summer and go fishing on the lake and that kind of thing. And so since they were just summer things, a lot of these walls really weren't properly insulated. There's a picture up in our attic space up here. So we're going to have some insulation put up here. So when you do this audit, one of the things that you'll see on the report is essentially you get $1.75 per square foot rebate on your on the insulation that's done, or decrease in price, I guess I should say instead. And then once I get all of these different insulation things completed, then we're going to do the blower door test again, and we'll see, how much we've dropped it. One of the things that we did not have to do was replace any windows. We had all triple pane, low E glass windows already on the house here, but just as a note, it's estimated that 10 to 25% of average household heating and cooling escapes through windows. And by installing these kinds of windows, you can save 10 to 35% of your electricity, of your heating source, whatever that is. And that's from the U.S. Department of Energy, 2015. So maybe this is a good spot to ask, are there any more questions right now before we dive into something a little new?
No additional questions at the moment, but something that we may want to touch upon, you can, if you are adding solar from Dwayne's presentation last week, if I'm not mistaken, before you add the solar, you're required to go through a HES audit. And I think the same thing is true for geothermal as well. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, because they don't want you putting big solar panels on and doing a lot of stuff if you don't need them. They want you to do this part first.
And so about how many person hours were they there insulating and checking things in your home at no cost to you?
So there were two guys, and they were here for about 4 hours. So basically about eight person hours for $50.
Okay, great.
For me it was free, but for now it would be like $50. Yeah, and if those numbers are right, it's paid for itself, within a month after them leaving. Then it was $50, and now I'm saving $450 a year or whatever. It's a month and a half payback. That's hard to beat.
Yeah, my experience, I guess my house was a bit draftier than yours, Gavin.
Oh, really?
I had 3 guys.
Okay.
For 2 full days. They worked 1 full day and then came back and worked another full day.
Wow.
So, but I also got great improvements as you had gotten.
No, cool. Okay. Okay.
All right. Oh, we have a comment here.
Okay.
If we had an assessment several years ago where they replaced all the light bulbs with
Yep.
CFLs, can we do this again?
That's an excellent question. Yes, you can do it every 3 years. So if it's been 3 years or more, you can definitely, you're eligible to do it again. Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Excellent. All right. So let's talk about water heating. So water heating, this is kind of cool. We're gonna get into some cool stuff here. So, you know, it's 18%, right, of what we're paying. And so we're gonna dip a toe into heat pumps. So what heat pumps do is they just move the heat. So, which is, it turns out, is a lot more efficient than making it. I'd always thought that an electric hot water heater was like the most efficient way to go, because you can see here, electric hot water heaters are 100% efficient. They take the electricity and they turn it into heat. It's a resistant heater inside the tank, and all the energy from the electricity goes into that. So you'd think like that's pretty much the best you could possibly do, right? So, but it turns out that heat pumps are much more efficient than that, because all they're doing is taking heat that's already there and moving it. So a heat pump, for example, you know, the electric water heater would cost about $438 a year to operate, and a heat pump only costs about $113 a year to operate. It's 400% efficient. So it works the same way as your refrigerator does. So what your refrigerator is doing is it's a heat pump. It's pumping the heat from inside your refrigerator or inside your freezer and pumping it out. So the backside of the refrigerator, freezer, you feel it. It's warm because that's the heat coming out, and the air, the inside of it is cold. And just sort of a word on gas hot water heaters. They are less expensive to operate, about $224 a year or so. But they're only about 60% efficient. About 40% of that heat is basically going up the vent. So heat pump hot water heaters work like this, so that they're drawing in air from the room, wherever this room is. So in my case, it's a basement space. So they're drawing this air in from the room. The air's got some heat in it. It's taking that heat out of the air and putting it into the water. So there's a coil going down here, and you can see it's heating the water, and then what comes back out of this thing is cold air. And it's actually cold and dry air, because it's doing the same thing as the dehumidifier does. It's passing over a cooling coil on its way out, and as it's doing that, any water in it is dropping out. So you're gonna get, not only are you getting hot water out of this, excuse me, but you're also getting some dehumidification at the same time. So these things aren't cheap. Heat pump hot water heater is about $1,400. This is the one I bought it's sitting in my basement. This is the energy sticker thing on the side of it. But the state of Connecticut has an incentive for $750. So when I basically bought this, that, you know, got an instant discount of $750 off of this thing, paid $750 less for it. And then as long as I remember to file properly my federal taxes, it's a federal tax rebate of $300 on top of that. So in the end, if it's $1,400 to start with, in the end, it's going to cost me about $350. And I get bonus points because I get dehumidification. You can just make out a corner of my dehumidifier sitting right here in my basement, because my basement would get damp. So I was running that thing a lot. I don't have that plugged in anymore. This thing, the hot water heater, is basically doing that for me all at the same time. So it's, you know, it costs about $113 a year to run it versus for an electric hot water heater. That's a savings of $325. And basically, you know, it's going to pay for itself in just slightly over a year. You can do the same trick with the clothes dryer. It's called a ventless clothes dryer, and it works the same way. So the air just circulates. It's ventless because the air just goes around and around. It doesn't get, you don't heat the air, pass it through the clothes, and then throw the hot air out outside. Instead, you heat the air up here, pass it through the clothes. It picks up the moisture and loses a little bit of heat to the clothes, comes back down here, passes through the condensing part of the system, where this is the cold part where the air passes through this, gets cooled down, the water drops out. So now you've got nice dry air coming around, and then that gets heated up again and goes through into the laundry. So that's a really efficient way of drying clothes. So just today, we started doing the insulation work on our house. So this is the truck here that's doing the guys brought in that's just doing the work. And so today we did the outside walls of the house. We did the cellulose insulation into that. We've still got, later this week, we're doing the foam, the spray foam in the crawl space underneath the house, and also the spray foam that we're doing up in the attic space. So the way they do this insulation here is they take one of the boards off. They just basically pry this off a little bit, pull the nails out, take this board off. And then here's the board that's off. They drill some holes through the plywood on the outside of the house, and here they are pumping the insulation in. So it's basically just ground up newspaper. They mixed up with some other things to prevent carpenter ants and mice and everything from liking it. And they basically just blowing that into those holes. It's pretty cool. If you're inside the house, you can actually hear it filling the wall cavity. You hear it bouncing around behind the sheetrock and filling that space up. And when they're done with that, they put a little plug in the hole, put the board back on, put the nails back in, putty over the nails, and all really needs to be done tomorrow. Just sand that down and touch it up with a little house paint, which I have left over from last time we painted the house. So that'll be pretty straightforward. So on the energy assessment that I had, I'll show you that in a sec. But it also, it lists a lot of good ideas of different things that you can do. For example, the clothes dryer that we talked about earlier, you can get a $250 incentive for that. $195 for changing out a freezer that's old. $300 for replacing an old refrigerator. Smart thermostats. I got some Google thermostats for like 25 bucks instead of the normal 125 or whatever they are, because I went through this program. There's discounts on insulation. So the insulation that we're doing right now would be whatever the cost would normally be, getting $1.75 per square foot discount on that because I had the home energy assessment audit done. There's also, all of my windows are good, so I'm not replacing any of my windows, but there is an incentive if you've got like a single pane window, you're changing that up for a triple pane window, there's $100 per window incentive. If you are if you're a low income person or you're renting a house to a low income person, you really should check out the deals on this, because I think for some of the things like for windows and insulation, I think it's literally free. If you've got the right conditions, the right person renting the house, or if your income is low enough, they'll do this. The incentives and everything for this are fantastic. The water heater replacement, we already talked about that. And then we are going to be talking about ground source heat pumps next week, and also the week after that, I'll be talking about air source heat pumps.
Gavin?
Yeah.
A note on refrigerators. If you have an old refrigerator just sitting in your basement or in your garage somewhere, and you don't even have it plugged in anymore, I believe there's also a program where they'll actually come take that refrigerator from you and then send you $30.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. So you get rid of it without having the range for anything. Yeah, good, excellent pump. Excellent point. Sorry. Also, let's see, there's funding wise, we've talked about this more, the next couple of weeks too, but for some of these things, there's also funding options. You can actually pay for some of these things through your electric bill. So you end up paying essentially the same amount that you are paying now for your electric bill, and while you're using less energy, and in the end get basically once you've paid it off through paying your bill at the higher level you are now, then you end up dropping to the lower level. So there's stuff to check out along that line in the on the website. Let's see, are there any other questions right now?
No other questions at the moment. If folks do have questions, feel free to type them in the chat box and we'll present them to Gavin.
Yeah. So, and then this is the company that I use, New England Smart Energy. They're really good. And then this is the Eversource website, which I put in the chat. So you should be able to see that there.
So Gavin, this was really a phone call to get things started. Is that right? In other words, you didn't have to file an application, fill out a form, wait for approval.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Like, I think you could go to the Eversource website and put some stuff in, and then they're going to basically contact one of the vendors for you and set the thing up. So I think it's just much more sensible, much more efficient just to pick one and call them. It's much more straightforward. And I think the phone, just getting somebody on the phone and talking through calendars and dates and stuff, that's definitely the easiest way to go. Much simple way to do it. So next week is Beth Ingram. She's going to be talking about geothermal. And I'm going to stop sharing for a second. I'm going to show you my electric bill, or the audit assessment report. Can you see that, Vincent?
No, cannot see the assessment report just yet. And we have a question that came in.
Okay, good.
You mentioned that we are eligible for an HES assessment every 3 years. Do you happen to know if adding an addition to the house makes one eligible again sooner?
I don't know. It might. I'm not sure.
I bet you the company that you use knows. So if you made a note of that phone number, I would give them a call and ask them. Which reminds me, Gavin's presentation will be at the Ridgefield Library site. Ridgefield Library does put all the presentations on what is a YouTube platform, and you'll be able to find his presentation there.
Yeah.
So I take it this is your report now. This is a PDF document.
Yeah. Yeah. Hold on one sec. I'm just pasting if I'm doing this right. Well, never mind. It's going to put something in the chat. So are you seeing the PDF document right now still?
I'm seeing the first page of the Home Energy Solutions
great.
report.
Okay, good. So let's see. So this is the report that they basically sent us. So they did all the work, and then afterwards they sent us this, and by email. And we got it done January 5th, and you can see all the different things essentially that we talked about, the different things that they cover in this. And so you get this nice report. Our house is 1,300 square feet. The estimate that they used was 22 cents per kilowatt hour for electricity, and basically $2, almost $3 for the gallon for propane. This was the estimated energy usage before the audit, after the audit, and after the assessment, and then after we do the recommended things. So down here, you see these are some of the things that they recommended. So some ceiling insulation here at a payback of like 2.3 years. The basement or crawl space insulation that we were talking about, spray foaming that's got a payback of about 2.6 years. So those are like real no-brainers. Those are real quick paybacks. I decided to do some of the extra things, some other things too, like the wall insulation outside. That's got a 6 or 7 year payback or so. There was one window that they found on the front porch, which was single pane. I'm not bothering to do that because it's on the porch windows are all triple pane past that. So that doesn't really, that's not really a factor. And then also they suggested, some heating system changes and stuff, but that's, that'll do later. It's gonna change things out for a heat pump system there. And just washing machine, dryer stuff. But that's about it, really. Any questions on that report?
Well, Gavin, I know when I got my report, which was a couple, 3 years earlier than yours, I also got a bunch of coupons for savings. They include those types of things in your report where they said, here's what you could save on insulation.
Yeah, there's a book. So this was what they emailed to me, but there was also like a whole book with they dog-eared all the pages and highlighted all the things that like the the refrigerators and other things, anything else that I could be doing, and like the water heater and that sort of stuff. So, yeah, circle all those things for me. It's a great reference to go and look through later and see what I might have missed and maybe what I want to do next. Yep.
Okay, great, Gavin. That was very informative. I really appreciate you going through that with us in a very logical way. Before we close the session with Andy in the library, are there any other questions at this time? If you have one, please just place it in the chat. We'll give you a moment, and then I'll turn to Andy to close out the presentation. Okay, we have a question here. You might mention that getting the insulation will keep homes cooler in the summer, not just good for winter. Do you want to speak to how the insulation works on both hot and cold?
Yeah, sure, that's good. Okay, so can you see this slide with the wheel? Is that showing?
Not yet.
Okay, hold on. I'm gonna stop sharing and then reshare. Let's try that. Cool. Can you see that now?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so like we were saying before, we spend more money on heating, but we do spend some on cooling, and altogether it's about 54% of the energy that the average household spends on heating or cooling. And anything you do insulation wise, better windows, any of that will affect both of these things. So that's a pretty big driver. And then like I'll put in another plug for like next week when we talk about heating and cooling with heat pumps. Again, those are like that water heater thing that we were talking about. They're 3 to 4 times more efficient than heating your house with with oil or gas or any of that, or like electric baseboard. They're just way more efficient than all of that. And if you maybe you don't have air conditioning in your house, maybe you just have heating, put a heat pump in, then you're going to end up with both things, which is really nice. Extra bonus on that.
Okay. Very good. Well, Andy, I believe that brings us to the end of Gavin's presentation. Thank you all for joining us, and please stay tuned next week for our next presentation in the series. Andy?
Yes, thank you both. Thank you, Gavin, so much.
You're welcome.
I want to give a shout out for May 10th, May 17th, and May 24th, the remainder of the series. On the 10th, replacing your oil furnace and HVAC with geothermal with Beth Ingram. On May 17th, replacing your oil furnace with an air source heat pump with Gavin again. And on May 24th, electric vehicle charging for the curious with Vincent. And that one is definitely on my list. I'm very curious. But thank you all for joining us. And again, all of these programs in this series are being recorded and they'll be up on the library's YouTube channel shortly. Thank you, everyone, and have a great evening.
Thanks.